How can you communicate effectively not only with people at work, but also in your personal life? That's the focus of our special compilation episode today at the Art and Science of Difficult Conversations podcast. In this episode, we are taking a break from work conversations and focusing on the relationships that matter most outside of work. We'll explore the importance of open and honest communication with ourselves and with the people we care about. In the first segment, you'll hear from Gavin on open and honest communication and how 6 key practices can transform the way you show up with the people you love. In the next segment, Garbutt, a psychotherapist and love and relationship coach, shares how to navigate triggers, red flags, and tough conversations in committed partnerships, and how intentional, honest dialogue can actually deepen connection. And finally, we bring it back to where many relationships begin, dating. You'll hear from dating and relationship expert Whitney Cobrin on how modern dating has changed, why clear intentions and boundaries matter, and how self-soothing and emotional regulation can help you date with more confidence and self-respect. As you listen, my invitation is for you to notice this question and see what comes up for you. Where am I not bringing my honest self into the relationships that matter to me? And what might change if I did? Let's dive in.
How do you have open and honest communication? That's what we talk about today with our guest, Gavin. This is something that people question about, whether it's a work relationship or a personal relationship. So take a listen. Let us know what you think.
Grace, welcome to our podcast. So tell the audience, who are you? What brought you to this point? Tell us all about your life story.
Well, I'll try to make it brief because I could drag it out. But my name is Gavin. I'm co-founder of No Honesty. And for the audience listening, just to be clear, that's KNOW, not NO. A little bit of play on words there, but also just digging into it a little bit, acknowledging the lack of honesty we have in our world today. And I grew up in Michigan. I'm the last of 8 kids, grew up on a dairy farm, so learning hard work very early with my family and my parents. And fast forward to where I am now, I'm very blessed to be working with my business partner, Ken Bogard, for the last over 6 years now together and really helping teams communicate better, focused on helping them be open and honest. And I've learned so much throughout that journey and gotten a lot of things wrong and learned where to get things right.
What drew you to caring about communication and within teams?
I just had been in so many cultures and workplace cultures in my personal life that people would kind of skirt the truth or just not be clear in their words, or pretend that things were better than they were without acknowledging what was actually going on. And it would drive me crazy. So we're all seeing the same thing, right? That would happen all the time, but we wouldn't talk about it and we wouldn't acknowledge it. And I kept seeing how that was hurting us and hurting us and hurting us. And in 2020, my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And we kind of just ignored that reality of what stage 4 meant. And he had a 3% chance of survival. But we dug in anyways. He was a fighter through and through. And so he went through chemo. He was on all the drugs and the pills, and just watching how that affected my family and our inability to really be honest and to say, here's what we're dealing with, a 3% chance. So it's not to say that a miracle couldn't happen, but the likelihood was really small and we never acknowledged it. And he had a battle of 5 months and then he was gone. And I think about all the time, the conversations I could have had with him before he left and learned so much more from him, especially as I'm on my entrepreneurial journey now and what he went through and what I could have learned. And I think we missed out on so much because of that. And so that informs a lot of why I do what I do and why this lights a fire under me, because these conversations, these difficult conversations at times, can literally be a matter of life and death. And I think we need to strengthen our ability to have them. And for me, that was a real miss on my part. And I don't want anybody to go through that again, whether it's we're talking about a cancer diagnosis and something as serious as that, or we're talking about a really big business objective. And are we going to hit it or are we going to not? And how that affects people's lives and our ability to be honest about it, to have those real, open, and honest conversations.
Mm. When you were growing up, what was that kind of the norm for your family to not talk about things or kind of skirt the serious issues?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think being the last of 8 kids is part of that too, because my parents had already been through raising kids. And so, um,
Mm.
I was there and I was watching it all happen. And we're not, uh, we'll tell you, we're not necessarily a touchy feely family. Uh, but what that kind of extends into is that we didn't necessarily talk about the hard things. And I think we're getting better at that, most certainly. But I didn't feel like that was the case when I was growing up. And not even just in family circumstances, but when I went to school with friends, like there are certain things you didn't talk about. And then you felt, at least I felt like, am I the only one this is happening to? Is this just me? And feeling so alone. And I think that a lot of people are experiencing that now, today even. Like I was experiencing it as a kid, and I think other people did too, but we're seeing it happen so much more prevalently now that even the US Surgeon General has declared loneliness a public health epidemic. It's
Mm.
killing people.
So sounds like honesty is in a way a tool, honest communication, a tool to break the barrier that keep us from connecting with each other.
Yeah,
Sounds like.
yes. And we'll talk about the book a little bit, but the tagline of our book is eliminate the divide, become a masterful communicator, and connect with anyone. Because largely, how we connect as human beings is through communication. And so if we're not skillful in that, if we don't understand what it means to be open, what it means to be honest, and how to use that to connect with other people, yeah, we're not going to have that connection. And it's a core human need if you think about it. And you can use that in different terms of you can call it connection, you can call it belonging, all of those, but it's a huge necessity as human beings for us to have a full and meaningful life.
What would you say prevents people from, since it's such an important need, from being honest, from having those conversations to connect with others and feel that belonging?
Yeah. I think what I really think it is a lack of openness. And so I want to be clear with the audience on what I mean by that because we're looking at it in the ways that maybe we haven't thought about before when we hear the phrase open and honest. So honesty is being truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. So if you think about words like vulnerability, authenticity, being yourself, that all falls into there. And that's really great, and that's what we want. We want people to connect as themselves, to not have to project a facade to feel like they fit in to a situation. But the reason I think that we do that, and we explore this in the book, is because there is a lack of openness right now in our culture and in our world. And openness is listening without reservation, putting your needs and wants on pause for someone else. And how often do we do that in a conversation with somebody else? How often do we pause and say, let me not try to get what I want out of this? Let me be fully present with you, hearing what you're saying. Process it for a moment and then have your response. And I think it's really hard to do these days with technology, with life moving faster than it is, to just pause and be fully present. Put your needs and wants on pause for a moment to be with somebody else. And so that's what I think is the problem, is that big drive, that lack of openness, and also the perceived lack of it too. Because
Mm.
you might be fully present with me, but if that's not how I'm experiencing the rest of the world, that's not what I'm going to expect in this conversation either. We all have watches on our wrist. Some of them have notifications that pop up. We have cell phones on the table where there's always one distraction away from no longer being fully present with somebody else and not really seeing them and creating that real communication. And we're all aware of that these days.
Mm. When you were working through your book, then when you were researching it, and you've dived a lot more into communication over time, did you ever think about it and reflect back onto kind of your relationship with your dad and your family and think like, did it bring up like different things for you as you were kind of working through this stuff and studying it?
Yeah, it's actually one of the stories in the book, but one of our 6 practices that we share because we want to make all of this simple, tangible, and implementable for people. And one of the 6 practices is called the agreement. And so, quite simply, it's a simple script we teach to people. And it goes like this. Will you agree with me on how we're going to communicate? I want you to be 100% honest. Again, meaning be truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. I promise I will be 100% open to it. I will listen without reservation. I will put my needs and wants on pause for you. And in return, I will be honest with you and I ask that you be completely open to it. So that's the simple script, right? We're working on it. We're using it with clients. We use it with all of our vendors, with in our team. It's amazing. But as I was writing the book and working on this, I was kept seeing it come back and back to my family and saying, "Oh, this is so great for teams, for organizations. I need it in my family too." And so I went and I used the agreement with my mom, actually. And you want to talk about difficult conversations. I love my mom to death. I think she's a wonderful person, but this was not how we had been operating since I became an adult. That was not a relationship. And so this is going to be kind of a hard right turn for us. And thankfully she said yes. And that's the way she wanted to communicate as well. Had that craving for it. But I would have never known that if I hadn't stepped into that conversation. And we're still working on it. I don't get it always perfect. She doesn't get it perfect, but that's also part of what it means to be human is that we're continually building these skills, building this relationship together. It's not just me all the time.
Mm. So you're building in that well, the word in that we use is psychological safety so that you can make mistakes and you can grow and learn together.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, I'm human, you're human. We're going to get things wrong, and that's part of the human condition. And if we can make that space for other people in how we would want it for ourselves, we're going to create better relationships. We're going to collaborate better. I personally think life's going to be better.
That's the tagline of our show: communicate better, live better.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Meeting of two worlds right here, Chris.
You've mentioned several steps. I, of course, have questions about the agreement. Let's say where somebody doesn't agree or they want to agree, but there's still something holding them back. Let's say a fear from looking back or a fear that they don't trust the other person, that they are safe with them. What would you suggest in those situations when people do want to have honest conversation with the other person, but um, they have some concerns when they are going to be honest? Let's say the information is going to be used against them, for example.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mm.
I think about it in terms of it's a living, breathing agreement.
Mhm.
So between the three of us, we have it here now, by the way, because we just did it together. And it's about building it up over time. But if we don't state that clearly that that's what we want, the likelihood that we're going to get it, that's the kind of communication we're going to have, is next to zero if we don't state what it is that we really want out of the conversation, out of the relationship. So, number one, that's really important to use it. But then it's living and breathing because you point back to it. So, Lucy, you bring an idea to me, and maybe I have 10 things already on my plate. Like, nope, don't want to hear it. And you can say, hey, remember when we made that agreement? I don't think you're being open right now.
Mhm.
Can you just give me a minute and hear what I'm really saying? And you bring it back to that. Or you come back and say, I had somebody ask me one time, how are you doing? And I said, good. Just kind of as what we all do, is what our immediate response is. And then I said, hang on, we have the agreement in place. Let me come back to that. I've actually had a really crazy day. I feel like I'm running all around, but I'm really excited to be here with you in this moment. And yeah, sure, it takes a couple of seconds extra, but now that person really knows where I'm at. And if somebody doesn't want to buy into the agreement and have that kind of communication with you, I also think that's great because now you know where the relationship stands and you can continue to build on it. Maybe you walk away from that relationship, but you have more information there. And I think that's the important part and helping each other to continue to build those skills over time. When you have the agreement in place, you're already starting from a head start, and then you're building it together. Versus if you don't use it at all, well, I don't really know where you're starting from then.
Mm.
So it sounds really important what we with Chris talk a lot about preparing and having that intention, what we want to get out of that conversation, out of that even relationship, sounds like, and being very intentional about it and communicate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned there are some other steps. What would be some other steps after that agreement
Mm-hmm.
is set?
Well, we built some other language around it because I think language is really important. I'm going to forget who it's quoted to. So if either of you know, please tell me. But the quote is limits of my language mean the limits of my world. And so we want to build
Mm.
some language around that for people. And so the question is, well, if you're not being honest, what's happening? If you're not being open, what's happening? And putting some language to that, some imagery to that for people and understanding. So when you are not being honest, you are being fake you. And that's the facade you project rather than being 100% honest. We all know what it feels like to be fake. And whatever that feels like to you, could feel like a mask coming over your face, feels icky, whatever it is. We know when we're in a conversation and we're being fake. Or we look back at it and we know that's what was happening. So building some awareness around that and working on that not happening in the moment. So that's on the honest side of things. Then we've got the wall. And the wall is the divide we put between ourselves and others rather than being 100% open. So imagine quite literally, I put up a brick wall between us, stops our conversation. So that's what we're talking about. When is that happening to you? And is it a person that it happens with? Is it a pattern? Is it a place? Whatever it is for people, starting to build that awareness too. I have the wall go up all the time. The example that I gave about ideas with you, Lucy, that happens between me and my business partner all the time. He's got so many fantastic ideas. But there are a lot of times where I do have everything going on my plate, and I'm like, I can't take another thing right now, or I can't hear you out, and if I shut him down, we're losing a really great idea, or we're losing the ability to collaborate together. So he will have to say to me sometimes, I just need you to be open for a minute. And that's a good reminder for me that, oh, yes, okay, let me pause, let me be there with you. So those are two really important pieces. And then taking you all the way around, I'll just give you all the 6 practices, and then whichever one pings you the most, we'll talk about. But the other one we have is called the assessment. And that's where we're putting some numbers to this because communication, conversations can be kind of nebulous, but we need to help build some language around it, help people get some arms around it, some data. So what the assessment is, it's free to take on our website if people want to, and I highly encourage you to do so. But it's giving you the real-time data on your ability to be honest and your ability to be open and putting them side by side so you know what is your ability to receive and deliver real communication? And we take it a step further, break it down into your work life, into your personal life, because sometimes it's different for people. Sometimes people are better at work or better in their personal life, but you can translate those skills. So that's really important. And then the last 2 we have are the still, which is helping you uncover and become aware of where you're at today. So building in some self-awareness, understanding, we look at it in terms of categories of life, but where are you content and where are you discontent? Because I will tell you that both of those, wherever you land, is showing up in your leadership. Even if you're content in all the things in your work life, but you are discontent in your personal life, that is translating to your leadership, that is translating to how you're having conversations. We got to become aware of that. And then once you know where you're at, that leads us to the last of the 6 practices, which I kind of touched on before, but it's called your pursuit. And it's answering the question of what do you really want? Because until you know what it is that you really want, out of the relationship, out of your work, out of whatever it might be, everything gets a little bit harder if you're not pointing towards what it is that you really want. And I talk to leaders all the time who can't identify that right away. And that's okay. It's okay, but it's not okay to never know. Because if you're leading people, if you're leading teams, if you're leading an organization, even if you're just leading yourself, you need to know what it is that you really want and you can begin working towards that. And then list the people around you to help get towards that. And help them get what they really want. Because I think we make a better world when people are getting what it is they really want. And what they really want could be better relationships, could be better work culture, whatever it is. It's going to be better for everybody, is what I believe. So that's all of the 6 practices. I know that's a lot, but take it where you want.
Two thoughts. That last one about just understanding the goal. I remember I worked with one manager around how to have all types of difficult conversations, and the only thing she took away was write down the goal of the conversation on the top of a piece of paper when she went in to talk to her team or her employees. And just that one act had like a huge impact on all of her communication. She said she was much more focused. She was able to manage, like if they were trying to go in different places, she was able to stay focused. And it helped her feel more comfortable knowing that I know where I need to go in this conversation and
Yeah,
with this relationship.
that's awesome. And we talk about it. We train leadership teams, but then we train their next level of people. So that could be their managers, their entire organization, whatever it looks like for them. But how much it helps a leader to know what it is that their direct report really wants. And maybe it's a promotion and you help them get there, or they really want some work life balance because they just brought a new family member in to their household. Whatever it is, you help them get what they really want. You are going to have a dedicated person at your company for a much longer time
Yeah.
than if you're just trying to hit measurables and hit metrics, which are important. But if you're helping people get what they really want, man, you got people bought in and you've got that productivity number skyrocketing when you do that.
Yeah. That's where you and I are aligned because we write about that stuff. Uh,
Exactly.
and I want to go back to something you said earlier on, which I loved, is the idea that if you are trying to do this agreement and you're trying to bring up stuff, and with Lucy, and Lucy says, "No, I don't agree to that." At least you know where you stand. And I think that's a really powerful thing, like getting comfortable with that no or that pushback. And I teach that a lot with conflict resolution or negotiation. Is once you hear a no, that's honesty. That's like them being truthful. You're not gonna get a false yes. They're not gonna falsely say no. That's a boundary, and now you can understand better the playground that you're in, the sandbox that you're in, and then you can understand why that's a boundary and what you need to do. How
Yeah,
do
that's
you
exactly it.
how do you otherwise access that kind of honesty? If because I think everybody's always concerned. A lot of managers are concerned with, how do I know my employees telling the truth, or how do I hold them accountable? But how are you accessing that honesty and creating that culture or the environment where they can access that?
Yeah, I think well, number one is obviously the agreement and talking about it and educating your people on what it means to be open and honest. And it's interesting because, Lucy, that's not the first time I've gotten that question about what if somebody says no. But interestingly enough, I've never had anybody say no to me. And I use the agreement at least once a day in any conversation that I'm having. And maybe part of it is because people know I'm an open and honest expert and this is my whole life. This is what I get fired up to talk about. But I've never had anybody say no. I've had people get curious or want to understand a little bit more. And what that says to me is that this is what people want. This is what we want in our relationships. This is what we want in our workplaces. And for some people, it might feel scary, but it's being able to walk through it together to have that difficult conversation because the conflict that people have and that we help people through for all of us, that conflict is either going to be resolved by having the conversation or you're going to hold on to it internally and you're going to have a conflict with somebody and they're never going to know. Like Chris said this thing and I thought he was wrong, but I'm never going to have that conversation with him. Well, now I've got a conflict with that Chris that he doesn't even know about. We can't resolve that. We can't make any kind of progress forward. Or worse yet, I take that to, let's say, Lucy, and now we're going to create a drama triangle around it and talk to Lucy about, can you believe what Chris said? This is crazy. Well, now I put you in a really difficult position, Lucy, because do you break trust with me and go talk to Chris about it? Or do you break trust with Chris and keep it between us? And that's not a fair thing either. And so helping people walk through that conflict. And I think the agreement puts some boundaries, some guardrails around that, like you were talking, Chris, that we can step into this conversation and we're not going to get it perfect. We are never going to be 100% honest, 100% open, 100% of the time. That's really key. We're working towards it. We're building these skills, but we're going to get it wrong sometimes. And I think that's okay. And I think it's even more okay when you own it, especially as a leader, or if you're watching a leader own it, say, I'm not getting it perfect all the time. That creates a lot more space for you to be able to have those conversations and to go back to them if you need to. But hopefully you don't have to, because you're having that conversation and that honesty on the table immediately rather than trying to skirt the truth, self-protect, whatever it might be.
What comes to mind is some scenarios with some clients that they are bringing, they work with different cultures. And some cultures are keeping the mask on, saving the face, communicating in a way that is more indirect rather than direct communication and feedback. So just hinting to really make sure the most important thing, we keep the face, we save the face. What would you say in those circumstances when, let's say, people do say, yes, I agree, but they actually feel no? And say, yes, I have to say yes to stay safe. But in reality, I'm not going to admit I don't understand. I'm just going to ask a colleague and help me figure it out. Because with my manager, I'm afraid if I say I don't get it, I'm going to look stupid.
Yeah.
Mm.
What would be the advice for the manager? How to navigate with these cultural differences, maybe? And perhaps for somebody that is in that situation that they know, the manager keeps telling me I should be honest, but I really cannot be honest.
Mhm.
Be-
Yeah. I think the manager's got to know that. So, first, are we helping them know that? Thinking about the employee, are you, the idea of managing up there, but then bringing it back again and again and again and saying, I want you to be open and honest with me. And if your people that you're managing feel like they can't be honest with you, you're going to get a sense of that. And most of the time, it is because you have a lack of openness and
Mm.
they're picking up on that. And so if I don't think you're going to be open, if I don't think you're really going to hear me, if you're going to pause what it is that you're doing, if you're a manager who's constantly running from meeting to meeting to meeting, or you're on your phone or talking when people are trying to have a conversation with you and you're not focused on them, look at that and examine that, because there's a lack of openness there. And people want to be honest. They really do. I believe that. Nobody wants to lie. Nobody wants to skirt the truth. Nobody wants to self protect. But that's happening because you, as a manager, have not practiced being open with them. You have not practiced listening without reservation to them. And without reservation, that's a really important point that I want to make there. Without reservation is without judgment, without preconceived notions. Whatever reservations you might have about that person, put those aside for a moment and really listen to what that person is saying. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them, doesn't mean you have to implement their idea, but help them be heard. I heard an insane stat the other day that we only feel heard 5% of our days. 5%.
Mm.
And so is it any wonder that your direct reports aren't going to be honest with you if you're not willing to be open to them? You got to consider that for yourself. And then if you have and you've done the work and you are open and you believe that and you're working on it and they're still not honest with you, well, then it's time to look at, is this the right person for the organization? But having that in place and keep pushing for it and keep asking for it, because this is really what people want in their lives. It's just, are you living it? Are you breathing it? Are you doing it?
Mm. And I imagine building that type of culture takes time anyway. Even if you are new and you as a manager, even if you're new and you're always going to have that matching your actions to your words. I can only imagine that'll take time to build that trust and honesty. So that reiterating and constantly bringing it up, and then also not punishing somebody if they are honest with you
Yeah, I
or not
do.
retaliating.
Yeah, I do think it takes time, but it's what we're doing is trying to shorten that gap and accelerate
Mm.
that by the education, by talking about it. Because if you want your people to be honest with you, right? It's like, yeah, I don't want my people to lie to me. And I think that's pretty obvious. But if you don't state that to them, that's not clear. And that's not fair to them. So
Mhm.
making it clear as it possibly can be. And in working with clients, when we're equipping them with this education, with these 6 practices, we're doing that within 3 months.
Mm.
And then we're going deeper on it and we're building the skills around it, right? But we're doing it pretty quickly there because we want to start working on it. We want to get that education. We want to make sure everybody understands what it means to be open and honest. And these are the expectations we have as an organization. And here's how it's going to move forward. And yes, it's going to take a little bit of time to rewire the neuroplasticity in people's brains, but it happens so much faster if you're saying it over and over again. You're using the agreement every single day.
Mm.
You're starting meetings out saying, I want everybody to be open and honest. Maybe it's in your core values, whatever it is. This is how we talk to, it's in your processes. This is how we talk to clients. This is how we operate internally and building it that way too. So it does take time, but I think it can be accelerated.
I'd love to get your thoughts on, there are times that managers can't be open and honest, right? If they're talking about employment statuses or disciplinary actions, or let's say just secret information that hasn't come out yet and they're not allowed to talk about it. How do you verbalize that to your team that you want to be open and honest and there's limits to that? What do you usually do around that?
Yeah. I think acknowledging that is really important. And when we're talking about building that trust too, I'm not saying go do a 180 because that'll shock your people and that'll shake the stability. So if you've been a closed book company, if you've never shared any kind of financials, I don't think it's a great idea to just send an email of the P&L to people the next day because they're not going to understand it. They're not going to have the education around it. You got to do it in steps and get there, but it is possible. And then, there's unfortunately those two exceptions right now in our world, which is your HR policies and your legal policies, right? If you sign an NDA, well, don't break the NDA. That would not be a great idea for you. But
Mm.
what we know about human beings is that they can handle bad, good, ugly, whatever it is type of news, but we can't handle no news. And so recognizing that, and if there's something you can't say yet, I like to think about it in terms of this phrase: be as honest as you can be as soon as you can be. So if there's rumblings of, let's say it's a round of layoffs happening and you're a manager and everybody's talking about it, everybody knows it's going to happen, but nobody knows what department, how many people are going to be cut, giving a weekly update of here's what I know, here's what I can share now, and I will share more with you when I know more and when I can. And helping people know that as much as possible, because if you don't say you don't know or you can't say whatever it is, people are going to be wondering. They're going to be wondering if they're the ones going to be cut, or if you have their best interest at heart, or if you're trying to navigate through it. Because that's a season of change for people, and if we don't help them through that, I don't know. I don't think that's really helpful to them.
I
What's
think
coming
that's
up?
so powerful. Sorry, I think I just want to reiterate what you just said, is that they don't like bad news, but they really hate no news at all. It's that
Mhm.
when there's that no news at all, there's that fear of the unknown, and all that's left is their brain to create their own story about what's happening, and it's going to be, not great. And so, yeah, it's going to be bad feelings if you give bad news, and it's still, you're at least able to manage it and still preserve a relationship. So I just wanted to really highlight that for our audience. Like, that's a really big thing to think about as a leader, is giving bad news is better than giving no news at all about something.
That's a great point. I have another question around the difference between being honest and maybe being blunt. Where is the line where the manager can say, well, I'm being honest, and the employee, let's say, they can say they are being aggressive, they are being offensive with me.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I'm going to come back to lack of openness on that one. But even more importantly, I think is this kind of tension or way of speaking that we have to figure out. And that is what you're talking about, Lucy, is brutal honesty. And I like to think of brutal honesty in terms of if you're coming at somebody with a dagger or with a knife, whatever it is, imagine that as your brutal honesty. You say, I'm going to be brutally honest with you right now. That's what you're doing to somebody else. And what is their reaction going to be? They're going to step back. They're going to protect. They're not going to hear a word that you say. And so if what you're saying, even if it's tough news or it's bad news like we were talking about, deliver it in a way that is 100% honest, vitally important that we have that, and 100% loving. And if we're talking about the workplace, I know love can be, people feel all types of way about the word love in the workplace, but I think it belongs and I think it's important that we talk about it more and we bring it back, because when you can be 100% honest and 100% loving, that is when you are setting somebody else up on the other side to be their best at being open. And that's what we need to do to get that across. Because otherwise, you're going to have that conversation 3, 4, 7, 10 times, and you're going to wonder, why are they not getting it? Why do they not get it? Well, they're not listening to you at all because you're coming at them with a dagger. And that's not going to help anybody grow if they're trying to just protect themselves. So do it in a way that's 100% loving and 100% honest. It can be hard to do, but it is possible. And I watch people and leaders do it every single day.
What would you say are some phrases that people could use to help them if they, let's say, are in the environment or they have the personality, they're just focused on getting things done and they're very extremely rather on focus on, yes, the relationships, emotions. They're a little bit very rational. Let's get this done. I'm just going to give you honest feedback. This is what it is. And when you tell them be more loving, they're like, I'm being honest. When they don't know what to imagine under that, what would you say they can do differently or things to say?
Well, I think considering that being honest is being loving is important there. And saying, I'm telling you this because I care about you, or I care about the outcome or what this is going to do for our business, and just making that clear. And then if it's feedback you're giving to somebody, I think it's wildly important to have some alternatives for them. So if it's, hey, saw you in this sales call and these 3 things weren't great. Here's how I would change them. Have some action steps. Help them step forward too, and not just, hey, you sucked in that call. I don't know, do something about that. That's not helpful. That's not helping somebody progress in a way. And especially if you're a manager, that's kind of your job, is to help people grow and to do that. So have some action steps for them, and just pausing to say, I'm giving this feedback to you because I care about you, or I care about your growth, or I want you to grow. Something like that. Just that little phrase, that's way more than what we're doing sometimes with people, and helping them understand that, because otherwise it can feel like we was talking about that attack on them. And that's not helpful. And if somebody has been in an experience of getting feedback that way or multiple times, they've got some scar tissue around those kind of conversations. So help them unbury that, to come out of that, to get rid of that scar tissue, if you will. And say, I'm giving you this feedback because I care about your growth, or I care about you, or I care about whatever it is. Say it that way. And then have it. And then once you give it, be 100% open to what they have to say. Even if they are defensive, even if they've got a million questions, whatever it is, hear what they're saying and help them grow.
I love that you have your brand on your mug.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Oh, this is
cool.
so cool.
Um, I'm thinking about, when you said that you started that using agreements with your mom, you went back and started using that for anybody in their personal life or professional life, right? Like, let's say they've had a culture or a relationship where they haven't done that kind of thing, and now they see the importance of, like, yeah, you're right, Grace, this is perfect. I love this. How can they start bringing it up? Like, hey, I want to start doing this, or maybe it's as simple as just saying, hey, I want to start doing this because I want us to communicate better. Um, Maybe that's as simple as that. But is there anything specifically in terms of how you help them frame that and kind of introduce that?
I think it's as simple as that. So we try not to overcomplicate it for people, but just in the framing of just saying, this is, I want more out of this relationship, or I want to take it deeper, or whatever it is that you want out of that. So don't go use the agreement with anybody on the street if you're not going to engage in it. Because the other part of the agreement is that if you're asking this of somebody, you have to model it really well. So I'm cognizant of that every time I ask somebody in a conversation that I'm having, whether it's a podcast like this, or it's networking, or I'm with a client. I have to model it really well. And I have to help them know, what does it look like to be honest? What does it look like to be open, to be fully present with them? I don't even bring my phone into meetings with me, or it stays in my bag. They don't ever see it. I try to not look at my watch, and things like that, and model it really well for people and have that understanding. And knowing that in the long-standing relationships, so that could be your family, that could be your friends that you've had for a really long time, whatever that is, this work will be a little bit harder, because in your work life, those are people you've known for 2 years, 5 years maybe, but not your entire lifetime. And so what we're looking at there at the relationship is we're looking at rebuilding the foundation. And you don't wanna take a bulldozer to the foundation. You wanna chip away at it over time to rebuild it and to recognize that. Because if you go in swinging that bulldozer, that wrecking ball, that's not gonna work out so well. So recognizing that it's built over time, but you have to build it together. It has to be done together in this togetherness, because we've gotten so divisive and we're not working together as well.
Do you
Um,
think the increase of hybrid working and Zoom working and the proliferation of just social media and like the anonymity has kind of made it worse or amplified those effects?
Yes, and I think a lot of it maybe has to do with social media,
Hmm.
because we can drop in and drop out there. When you sign up and hit the user agreement for whatever platform it is, they don't have the agreement in there as we're talking about it. They don't have that you're going to engage thoughtfully in dialogue with people. You can zoom in there, you can drop a controversial opinion and leave. You don't have to have that difficult conversation with somebody and to understand where they're at.
Hmm.
And so then we start to see people as their little icon picture or their username, instead of as a human being on the other side of things. Drop in, leave a scathing comment we would never say to somebody's face. And then we start to view all human beings that way. And so I think you can have open and honest teams and open and honest relationships over Zoom, over phone calls, absolutely. But over social media, it's harder. And then the screen, it adds an element to it, because as I'm looking at you, Chris, we're doing this on Zoom. And so there's a whole room outside of me. So that means I have to be even more focused to stay in this conversation, to give you my entire complete presence. And I think that's harder to do for people, but not impossible. I think it can be done. But
Hmm.
there's that human connection part that is missing out of it. And so that's where I struggle with it. And I understand the flexibility and how we can diversify teams. I mean, look at this would never happen, this conversation we're having, if we didn't have Zoom and that kind of technology. But it's hurting our ability to connect as human beings, to be in person with each other too. And so we got to
Hmm.
recognize that. And how do we combat that and overcome that?
That's such a gem of what you said about our patterns of dropping in and out of interactions, because you can't. That's not normal in terms of just you and me talking or us talking, right? Like in real life, we're talking, we're just in the room unless we physically leave the room. Um, and that's a huge thing.
Yeah,
So
I didn't even
thanks for
think
that
about it
gem.
in those ways, but yeah, the physicality of it. I wouldn't just hop into a quick conference room and shout something at you and then leave. That's not how communication or conversations usually work, but you're right, that's what's
Right.
happening online.
On the street, maybe we'll just yell at
Mhm.
each other on the street randomly.
Yes.
and when we talk about yelling, I wonder, what are some of your strategies? Let's say people yell when they get upset, when they get triggered. When you yourself get triggered, what are some of your strategies that help you calm down, take a moment, rather than react immediately and snap back at them, let's say, in that difficult conversation?
Oh, that's so hard. But I think the pause is really important. And so conversations don't get to that point if you're really, again, open to somebody, focused on what they're saying. Because if you're not, as human beings, we can't multitask well. And so, Lucy, if you're talking and you say something and then I'm trying to pre populate my response, well, now I'm trying to multitask, which means I'm really not listening to you at all. and I'm kind of amping myself up with my response. But if I'm actually present with you and listening, there's going to be that natural pause where my brain's kind of processing. Might be 2 seconds, but that pause is me thinking and giving a little bit of space so we're not getting to that overreactive point. And then knowing that if it does happen, because we're human beings and we can fly off the handle, understanding why that happens for you. Because if it's happening all the time, what I'd say is that there's a point in your life where you feel like you're not being heard. And so then you have to fly off the handle to be heard. And so why is that happening? Do you not have people in your life who are really listening to you? Do you feel like you're not being heard? What's happening there? Because it's kind of like I think about it as like a pressure cooker or a bottle popping off. All that pressure is building and building and building. And that's when you see people start yelling or freaking out because they feel like they're not being heard. And what that's telling me is that there's probably somewhere in their life a lack of openness from the people around them, from their teams, whatever that looks like. And so starting to investigate that so you don't ever get to that point, or you get to that point very, very rarely. And that's one area. And then the other way I think about it is, are you truly in line with yourself? Do you know what it is that you really want? Because if you don't know what you really want, you're going to get frustrated a lot faster. You feel like you're not going to make progress towards it because you're not clear on what it is. And so that's the other side of it too.
Sounds like
Grace,
really
you could have
being
been a. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
today we're just
This is the Grace. To your point, this is the hard part about doing Zoom interviews in a group.
Mhm.
It's because in real life, obviously, we would just like look at each other and see like body language, like one of us is going to talk.
Yep.
But you can't do that over Zoom. Everything just kind of looks the same as we're looking at each
slightly
other.
different. Yeah. Now I forgot what I wanted to say. Go ahead.
Good. I wanted you to forget. Just kidding.
I know that was your strategy.
That was my strategy. I was just gonna say, Grace, you could have been a therapist.
Mm. Well, that is a really high honor. Thank you, Chris. I have been in therapy for 3 years, and on my own, my husband and I went through premarital counseling with a therapist. I've recently engaged with a new form of therapy around the IFS model, internal family systems. And so
Yep.
I think that's really important because my job is to lead people and to help people walk through this. And so if I'm not centered on myself, like we were just talking about, it's going to be a lot harder for me to lead teams, to lead companies through this. And I love therapy. Huge proponent of it. I think it's fantastic.
So I'm a therapist as well, and what you said before about multitasking and like thinking of a response when somebody's talking. I remember when we were going through training, education in grad school, and like that's usually the question most therapists have in training is, what do I say when they say this? What do I say when this person says this? Like everybody's always concerned about what they're going to say next. And for me, my journey, I found that over time, the more I shifted to just let me just listen as deeply as I can to what the other person's thinking and feeling, the less I had to worry about what to say next, because it just came naturally what I had to say next. As long as I have a framework of what's supposed to happen. But as long as I have that framework, as long as I'm listening deeply to what you're feeling, what you're expressing, the next thing that comes out will be pretty natural. It'll come out as long as I'm really listening to you and holding space for that. So I think that's why I think like the idea of therapy really falls into what you're saying, because it's the same idea. How do we hold space for somebody and listen and not be distracted by our own thoughts of whatever we're going to do next, groceries or errands or whatever we're going to think we're going to say next.
Yeah. And I love that. And I think it's interesting that people want to know what to say next because they want that clear next step or direction, it's natural what we want as human beings, kind of want to know what to say next. But if we can get comfortable with not having a pre-populated response, we have a better conversation. We have better collaboration for that. And so I love therapy, and like I said, engaged in it for years. And I think about that in terms of teams. And so when you're in a team, it should not feel like a therapy session because we're working together to collaborate. So it's a big, clear difference there. But we kind of over index and go the opposite way where I just need to be heard. I need to get my point across. And so we got to bring it towards the middle. And can I really hear what Chris is saying and his idea? And maybe it overlaps with mine. Maybe it's completely different. And we find something in the middle there. And then Lucy chimes in and Lucy adds some really great insight to it because she's got a position in the company or within the friendship, whatever it is that we're talking about, that gives us a different perspective. And now we're creating something even better together because that's when we're really winning, is when we're collaborating. You can go so much further as a team together than you can by yourself. I think that's really important. But we got to be able to actually hear what somebody is saying and create that space.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Grace, let's imagine that somebody's listening right now and they skipped the entire episode and they only wanted to listen to the last 10 minutes of this episode for whatever reason in their life. What are 1 to 2 takeaways that they could take away from this conversation?
Okay, well, first go back and listen to the whole thing. What are you doing? Come on. But I understand that. But one or two things that I would say is, are you explicit about how you want your relationships to be and your communication? Are you wildly clear with people that you want an open and honest conversation, that you want open and honest communication, that you want an open and honest relationship? Do they know that? Do they know what that means? Do they know what that looks like? Are you collaborating and creating it together? Because if you have not expressly stated that, they're going to make something else up in their mind and it's not going to be the exact version of what you're hoping for. So getting wildly clear on that. And then I think the other part that we touched on that was really interesting to me is when we're talking about manager conversations. And if you get a sense that your people aren't being honest with you, understand that that is something that's coming from you. And they know that they either know or they assume that you are not going to be open to their ideas, that you are not going to listen to what they really have to say. So why would they be honest with you? And let's be fair to them. Why would they be honest with you? And so you got to look back at yourself. Are you really being honest with them? And are you really being open to them? Consider that for yourself. Start there.
Grace,
Yeah.
where can people find you? Where can people follow you? Where can they get your book that's coming out?
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun conversation. And our book is called No Honesty. Again, KNOW. You can get that, on all the big places where books are sold. On our website, it'll be nohonesty.com/book. So that's KNOW honesty.com/book. It's where you can get that. We dive even further into this. We get really deep into the 6 practices that I shared. We share stories that we've been through. We share stories of leaders who have gone through these experiences in our personal lives. We get into it and we share not only the stories, but also the education, some theory around it to help you really build up these skills and to change how the world communicates. That's our big goal. And we do that person by person. So when you read the book, then go have a conversation with somebody about it. Go implement this into your life. Have this be a way of communicating for you. So that's really important. And then if you want to continue the conversation with me, please reach out on LinkedIn. I love to talk about this all day long. We could go for another 3 hours into this if it were
For sure.
up to me. But if there's something I said that you're like, oh, I don't agree with that, or I love that, I want to hear more about that, reach out to me. Let's have a conversation. Let's keep it going.
Yeah. And we'll put links to all that in the show notes. Do you have an audiobook version?
We will. Yes, there'll be an audiobook
Yay.
version. It's myself and Ken, my business partner, read it 50-50. So yeah, if you love the sound of my voice, great. You'll get to hear it 50% of the time. If you don't, great. You'll only hear it 50% of the time.
So win either way.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
How was it reading your own book out loud?
It was, I don't say this to be egotistical, but it was really enlightening because this book has been a multiple years project for us because we wanted to get it right for people and we wanted to share the best stories possible. And so it took a lot of work and energy and effort, but it was living as a document on a computer for a lot of those years. And so then we got to the point where we were editing it and then printing it out and reading it out loud. And it was just this kind of amazing light bulb in my mind. Wow, we actually wrote all of this. We are subject matter experts in this. Ken and I co-wrote it together. We had those conversations. We deliberated over this. We wanted to make this the best possible. And so reading it out loud was such a gift and such a joy. And it was really actually doing the audiobook recording was fun because you're in this sound booth. And so I'm picturing myself talking to clients and, I use my hands when I'm speaking a lot. And so I'm trying to do that cognizantly of not bumping the mic and picturing people's minds in my head as I'm looking at a gray soundboard. But it was really fun. And I hope that enthusiasm comes through for people when they're listening to it too, because like I said, I love talking about this. This is my life's work, and I think that'll come through in the audiobook too.
Awesome. I'm excited to check it out. Oh, so everybody knows we're recording this before it comes out. So
yes,
I
we're
have to
recording
wait
before,
like
but
everybody
it's
else.
accessible to you now.
It's available when you're listening to
Yes.
this. You can go get it right this minute.
There we go.
Lucy, any final thoughts from you?
I really love the conversation. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And a term came up for me, a caring honesty rather than blunt honesty. Just as another takeaway for those that are feeling they're already honest. Are you being lovingly honest?
Lovingly
Chris.
honest. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. I like the balancing the love with that honesty, or the honesty is loving. And because whenever we talk about values, or in my previous companies, we talked about values that are important to us. I always use love as one of the values, and not romantic love, but more so like, do I care about the people around me? Do I want the best for them, and do I want them to do well? And so it resonated with me, at least, for sure. Grace, this was a awesome time. We're communication nerds, so we love talking about this stuff. And so it was a real pleasure having you join us today. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
As Lucy and I are such communication nerds, that's why we have this podcast around difficult conversations. We do care so much and think so much about communication, especially in high stakes situations. And so I really appreciate Grace coming on and sharing about how do we be open and honest in these kind of things. So if you are interested, if you have any thoughts, please give us a like, give us a comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.
Because we've never been taught these skills and we're insecure in our egos. We're frightened. So we want to jump in to shut the other person down. Otherwise, we're going to get triggered and we're going to go into I'm about 4 and my big sister is getting something that I'm not getting.
Welcome to the art and science of difficult conversations, where we believe when you communicate better, you live better. As always, I'm one of your hosts, Chris, and I am a coach and therapist. I work with purpose-driven leaders to manage difficult relationships and conversations. You'll notice that one of my co-hosts, Lucy, is not here today. It's because she's just busy. Unfortunately, we're going to miss her, but that's okay because we got a really cool conversation lined up for you. As I mentioned, I'm also a therapist, so I do that work. And so I often connect with other people who are in the same space doing therapy and coaching. So it's cool to meld our worlds and see how we're making an impact on the people around us and how we can get people to communicate better at the end of the day. So today I'm excited because we're going to talk about how do you manage and navigate some of these difficult conversations and conflicts within relationships. How are you managing your own triggers? How are you listening well? And today I have with me a guest, a world-renowned psychotherapist and coach specializing in love and relationships, Heather Garbutt. She's on a mission with the goal of empowering 10 million people to create true, loving, and mutually supportive relationships. Heather, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here.
We're so happy to have you here. I know Lucy is sad that she's not able to be here, but just briefly, can you share with the audience kind of what you do and how do you do it?
I help people separate well from relationships so that they can learn and grow from them, so they don't make the same mistakes again. So they look after their kids if they have them from a sort of mutually respectful, co-parenting, cooperative point of view. So they don't do their kids damage, so it doesn't go through the next generations. And so they don't spend all the money they're going to need to create 2 homes on lawyers' fees. So that's the first part of what I do. My favorite part is calling in the one, which is to help people who are single to find true love. And I have great success with that. It's such a joy to be invited to weddings. It's wonderful.
That's awesome. And I think that's obviously the difference between a therapist and a coach, right? The therapist part of me would like shudders to even think about being invited to a client's wedding. But the coach part of me says, that'd be great. It was a great relationship if we're that close. So it's definitely interesting. Let's dive into this because I think this is such an interesting melding of the work that we do on our podcast and the work that you do every day. You know, when it comes to relationships, what I see a lot is the idea of trust and commitment to one another. And so what are your thoughts on kind of how people build trust and that process of being committed to one another?
Yeah, it's really important. You know, I get people to call in their one, but quite often they're learning new relationship skills that they didn't have before. So I think, firstly, it's important to be mutually intentional. You work together on what you want your relationship to be like. So you've got a sort of common goal. If you want to be harmonious and work through things in a loving and respectful way, that's what your intention is. That's what you come to with warmth and commitment. And from that place, you can trust each other. For when the mess happens, girl, it always will, one way or another, even if it's just over the washing up or not shutting a door, you know, putting the toothpaste lid on, you know, those little triggers will always happen, which are small triggers for big emotions quite often. Then you're prepared. You know, okay, we can have a go at each other about this, or we can choose not to. We can choose to see, oh, this is one of those patterns where we get into retaliation and wanting to get power over and win and lose and moral high ground and all of that from all of our insecurities. Or we can choose to say, hey, hang on a minute, we're doing it again. Should we just take a few moments? Let's calm down. I'm really sorry I said that. I'm really sorry I retaliated. That's where you want to be going. And from that point of view as well, the date night thing is really important because that's where you keep addressing anything that comes up. That's where you keep your connection. That's where you keep reflecting and checking in. Is this still where we are? You know, we said at the beginning of last year we wanted to have 3 holidays this year. And we just had to spend a load of money redoing the kitchen because of a plumbing problem. Do we still want to go on the 3 holidays? You know, I'm talking about it in very lumpy ways, but it could be about all sorts of other things. The things that undo people are those little things and also the big stresses. So things around money, health, family, work, career, spirituality. We can all have the odd emotional crisis. Those are the big triggers that undo people.
There's so much to unpack. I want to dive into like everything. We could spend like 8 hours just talking about each one of those things. And let me go ahead. Let's go to chronological order of what you brought up. You know, I love the idea, and that's, you know, obviously the idea of like mutually working together to figure out how is our process going to be? What are we going to do? What are your thoughts on like, there seems to be a really big trend of, these are my non-negotiables. I have a long list of red flags, and you hit any of them, that's it. We're not talking about it. We're not going to confer anymore. It's just over. How do you feel about that trend of like the quick to release relationships?
I think it rather depends what the red flags are. If they come under the heading of manipulation, abuse, disrespect of boundaries, any of those, out the door. Absolutely. I suppose I'd quite like to ask you what you were thinking of when you said the red flags. Are those the sort of things you were meaning?
Well, I see that too. Like I agree wholeheartedly. Like there's boundary crossings or manipulation or just, you know, unhealthy behaviors that might be part of the dynamic. I also see things like a red flag is if they don't like to eat this type of food, or if they don't like to communicate in this way or that way, or maybe they don't show their love in affection. They only like to show their love in gifts, right? But that's the red flag. They're like, nope, I don't like that kind of person. I'm not going to bother trying to get to know that or navigate that difference.
I think it's really important for each person to make that decision themselves, because how important is it for you to be having physical affection? Recently was working with a woman that wasn't part of her relationship after they'd had their children. And it really, really hurt her to the point where she was nearly burned out trying to keep the relationship going, sort of at her physical and emotional cost. And it was fine for her partner. He was fine with it. And he kept doing all of the other winning things. But because that wasn't there at the core, she didn't feel loved. If you don't feel loved, I mean, it's quite hard to go round that dog leg. Yes, he gave me the red flowers at Valentine's Day. Yes, he provides everything for the children. Yes, he takes care of all of the household finances, all of that things. But I just feel like I'm not really here. Then, that's a red flag the size of the White House, isn't it?
That takes a lot of self-awareness, though, right? Like to know, like, oh, it's even the differentiation of like what love makes me feel fulfilled versus, because like for that in that example, the partner, that might be how he just shows love, like doing all these acts of service, right? And that's how he's like, oh, this is exactly how I demonstrate and show that I really care for you. And so, how do you help people build that self-awareness, or how can someone build that self-awareness of what they really want and need?
There's a really simple quiz called the 5 Love Languages quiz that you can do, and it gives you very straightforward ideas. What I would also say is it's better to catch it at the beginning. So if you do see somebody and they want to give you gifts, okay, you could say that could be love bombing, but they want to give you gifts, they want to do everything for you, but you don't really feel that you can talk to them, you can't be yourself with them, then that is a red flag. You don't want to be finding that out 20 years down the line because you thought, well, he's nice, she's nice, there's not a mean bone in their body, but, there's not a meeting of heart and soul either. You want to be finding that out after 2 or 3 dates.
Yeah, early on, I think that makes sense for sure. And when we talk about these types of conversations, what are the skills that are really helpful? Because these are really personal conversations with somebody, and they like have high stakes because it's like, our future. We feel like our future's on the line here. So what are the skills you recommend, or the tactics you recommend for people to navigate these conversations well?
I think really initially in the first dates, you sort of explore what each of your values are, what's important to you. There's always a balance between having fun and having a job interview, It's difficult.
Right, because it's not a job interview, it's a date.
Yeah, exactly. So you want to be having fun, but you can do it in fun ways. I saw a series called The Split, and there was a follow-up, so a couple of episodes of it, where the woman and the man who had met were playing the game where they said, toast or plain bread, beach or mountains, heels or pumps, So you could get, in a daft way, a low-charged way, a sense of who the other person was. It doesn't have to be, great gravitas. But I think exploring the values gently, like who are their heroes, who do they detest? I mean, it's really a very clear thing. I mean, and it's so divided at the moment, somebody voted for Kamala and somebody voted for Donald, then, there's lots of conflict already going on there. So those sorts of things matter, what your values are. If you're a family person and you want to spend 2 weekends a month with your family, but your prospective partner doesn't have a good relationship with their family, isn't interested in being a family person, that's pretty key. Let's think about some values. Respect, love, trust, honesty, kindness. Those are the ones you need to be looking for. How do they feel about money? How do they feel about their work? How do they feel about family? How do they feel about sex? How do they feel about spirituality? If you're looking for a match where you can be yourself, you need at least half of those, maybe more, to be in common. Otherwise, it's a lot harder work. And you don't want your relationship to be endurance and negotiation the whole time.
Yeah. That's interesting because when I was younger, I had a friend tell me, well, he was talking to a group, we were as a group, he was talking to us about how a good marriage is based upon marrying somebody from the same culture as you. And he wasn't saying the same ethnic race culture necessarily. He was saying somebody with the same or similar worldview and norms, values, and beliefs, kind of like what you're saying, which made sense to me at the time. And so I think it's interesting because I've also, as a therapist, I've obviously worked with couples or people who don't have the same culture as their partner, but by having good communication, they can navigate it as long as they both have a similar value of like, let's talk it out or let's communicate what our values are and how we'll navigate it together. So there is a little bit of negotiation, but you're saying like there might be a point where there might be too much where if you have to negotiate every single thing, that's a lot.
Yeah. The people you're talking about have enough affinity.
Mm.
And that's key. And it can be in the actual attitude. It's not necessarily that you both like dancing or you both like skiing or you both like reading, Although those things can be incredibly powerful. If somebody likes reading and somebody's a sports watcher, if that's going to be what you do every evening, somebody's going to be upset. How you spend your time.
Yeah.
So there needs to be enough difference between you that there's some sand in the oyster to create the pearl, but not so much difference that all you feel is abrasion.
Great metaphor. So let's talk about, I guess I'm wondering, let's say there is a couple that's been together, married for a few years now, and now they're like, they haven't had these conversations enough and they like, they just have been able to get by because one person's just kind of acquiescing in whatever way, or both are. But now things are getting a little more difficult. Like maybe they have kids, maybe life's changed, their life circumstances have changed. How would you best recommend or advise or coach people in these relationships to start having these better conversations and listening to each other?
Yeah. So you have the date night. And you work out how to get a babysitter so that the two of you can just be alone. You can't do it with distraction. You can't do it with the TV on. You need to be dedicating the time. It may only need to be 2 hours. And what I like to do is to start it off with appreciations. So it can be gratitude for what's happened this week, which already puts you in a better frame of mind because you're not looking for everything that went wrong. You're looking for everything that went right. And then a pat on the back for yourself for whatever you've achieved or things you didn't fall into or the nice things that have come your way. But generally a pat on the back first, something you feel good about. And then appreciate the other person, the things that you've seen that they've done or how they've been. So that you both start the next bit of the conversation from a good place. And you need to listen to each other well and validate each other's feelings. So say you've got an issue that's arising about, I don't know, how you parent your kids. You have a big piece of space about each of your feelings about it. I feel when you say this to little Johnny like this. This is what I see in his face. This is how it affects me. And then the other person can say, okay, I see how that affects you. I hadn't seen it from that point of view. Just hearing, not commenting, just hearing. And also reflecting what they've heard to make sure that it's understood, because you might assume something. And you can ask questions, a little bit more information, but not so much that it's the sort of question of, well, why did you react like that then? No, it's a sort of, can you tell me more?
Yeah. Just curiosity, right?
Yeah, curiosity and kindness and openness. And then the other person can have their parts that they say. And so there's a chance that you hear each other's points of view and you don't, to the best of your ability, you don't judge. I mean, I think when things have really come unstuck, it's quite difficult to get back from, like trying to repair an engine when you just filled it with super glue. But, if you can set these sorts of things off at the beginning, the chances are you won't get to that really glued together, immovable log jam of difficulty. So those are the initial things, to really listen to each other and not to make it necessarily any decisions then, but to go away and reflect and come back together and think about it some more. And during that conversation, you might actually explore, particularly in parenting is so powerful, where your feelings came from. You know, how were you treated when you were little? Did your mum shout at you? Did your dad shout at you? Did they shut you outside, or, you know, any of the things that ancient parenting skills would have done?
Right.
And does it make you feel like that's happening to little John as well? So then you can unpack it a bit more. There's some complex skills there that can be quite sophisticated, which would be to say, okay, do you want to go into that? There's always that asking. Do you want to go into that? How old do you feel? How old do you feel when you see that happening and you're outraged or you're upset? How old do you feel? And what are you believing? And it goes through that. What are you believing about yourself, about other people, about the world, about love, about mum, about dad? All right, okay. And so you can separate what's you and then what's really true about this situation. So you know you're in your triggered world, and then you can see what's really true.
Maybe this is related. Why do you think people have such a hard time listening at the core of it, instead of wanting to jump in, or or taking things personally, or start getting triggered, instead of being curious and open and and kind?
Because we've never been taught these skills. And we're insecure in our egos. We're frightened. So we want to jump in to shut the other person down. Otherwise, we're going to get triggered. And we're going to go into the, I'm about 4. And my big sister is getting something that I'm not getting. And that makes me feel outraged. And I want you to see me, not her. You know, it could be something as simple as that. So that's why I'm saying that's quite sophisticated. Because it does require a lot of presence of mind not to take it personally. And, you know, I've had a spat with my partner today over leaving lights on, you know. That comes from his childhood, where he was told not to leave lights on. He's gone all parental on me, you know. And I've gone all on you, you know, sort of thing. And we've had to sort of calm ourselves down and come back to it and talk it through. And, okay, you went parental, I went infantile. Shall we start that again? Shall I explain to you how long the lights have been on, that they've not been on overnight? I just put them on 2 minutes before, you know. But you came in at that point and you thought they'd been on overnight. That's where you go. That's where you go. And I can really understand you're worried about the energy costs going up and you want to take care of things. You know, it's not necessarily exactly as I've described, but that's where we go. That's where we go when we get triggered. We get fragile, defensive, retaliatory, moral high ground.
Yeah.
Win, lose. Just as an amusing little story, I was at a dinner party a couple of weeks back and there was a man there and his wife wasn't there. And he was just jokingly saying to another friend that I overheard, he said, I finally worked out how to win an argument with my wife. I argue with the same lack of logic that she gives me, and it completely stumps her. And the guy I was sitting next to was really sweet. And he said, so you think discussing things with her is about winning and losing? And he said, well, yeah. Like, this is a 60-year-old, you know.
Yeah.
Never occurred to him that there could be anything about win-win rather than win-lose.
So that's a good segue into thinking about, how do you like to help people view conflict? If it's not win-lose, or it's not even about winning, it's really about how do we work together? How do you help people move and navigate through that conversation?
I think I usually use it as a way of deepening connection. You see it that way. If you possibly can. I mean, you know, we're not talking like this being easy, because we're managing our own feelings, somebody else is managing theirs, we're triggered and all of that. But if you can see it and have a structure around it, it stops you getting in the mud in the middle. So I help people create the structures, like an intentional discussion. What do we want out of this discussion together? We want to come out with some sort of understanding and a deeper connection together. We want to come out being able to cooperate better. We want to maintain our respect and love for each other throughout. So, that requires you to communicate with helpful language. So it's not judgment, it's not criticism, it's not stonewalling, all of the things that Gottman talks about. It's not that taking the mickey out of somebody. Do you know that phrase? Is that an American phrase? No, it means mocking somebody unkindly. It means listening with respect, listening with love, being open, taking responsibility, honoring your feelings and honoring the other person's feelings, and working towards a win-win.
Which step of that do you find the hardest for people to grasp?
I think actually making the structure, because people just generally go at it hammer and tongs. There aren't that many relationship skills lessons
Yeah.
about. You don't get taught that at school so much. Some forward-looking schools you might, but not generally. Yeah, so there's not the intentionality. It's like driving without a map, without a sat-nav to guide you.
That's one of the things I actually have a course on difficult conversations, and that's like one of the big pieces is talking about the agenda, quote unquote, of a difficult conversation. It's not about like, you'll talk about this topic, then this topic, but there's actual flow to how a conversation should go that will help it be more successful.
Okay, well, tell me about that then, because that sounds interesting to me. I want your knowledge now, please.
Yeah, I always teach it in the sense of just there's a introduction and there's like very specific things you need to say inside of that to put the other person at ease, reduce that fight or flight or freeze response. And if they are someone that's like, and a lot of times this might be in a work situation, but if they're not feeling empowered or they're feeling less, power than you for whatever dynamic it is, it's facilitating that in a way where you're able to lift them up. So you're making them equal with you, or you're making yourself equal to somebody else if they're higher power than you. Then you go through ground rules, which helps sets the boundaries of what the conversation is and make sure you're talking about the same thing. And then it's just exploring their point of view, explaining your point of view, and then coming up with a collaborative solution together. Like, what are we going to do to move forward? And then it's closing from there and acknowledgement and gratitude for being in the conversation. So a lot of it is just really empowering the other person, emphasizing their choice, but also the confidence to guide the conversation in a way. You're taking control of a conversation essentially, but even though it's a very collaborative process, you're taking control of this process and you're gaining their buy-in each step of the way too.
Yeah. And that's great. Yes, and that's an interesting thing where you've got a power imbalance, particularly in the workplace. Yeah, I can see that. So, yeah, I can see the overlaps as well. If that's your agreed intention, that you're equals in the conversation and that the parameters of it. Yes, we're here to talk about little John. We're not here to talk about what went on with your parents at the weekend. We're choosing to focus on one particular bit, and we have confidence we can come back to what happened another time. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. Yeah, it's really useful.
I'm interested, what do you do in situations, especially because you deal with people who are separating and kind of ending relationships? What do you do when there is no easy outcome? There's no agreement on what the next step should be, or they're never going to see eye to eye on what's happening and what should happen next.
Usually, I get just one person from the couple come to do conscious uncoupling. I don't usually work with them both. There's usually one person who is willing. I do know some divorce coaches who do the legal side of things or are more versed in the legal side of things who will see both. I prefer just to see one. And generally, there is only one that's willing, and that's probably why the relationship has stopped working, because there's one person wants to reflect and take responsibility, and the other person just is entrenched somewhere. And that's sad to see. That's what I do. I've seen some of the work by Terry Real about people who are entrenched and walled off, and I can see that he can really do brilliant stuff with that. But I'm not trained in that, and as I say, I generally only see one person to conscious uncouple.
Yeah, and that's got to be hard. You're only getting one side of the story. It's hard for you to really know everything that's actually happening.
Absolutely. And who's to know what's actually happening?
Right.
Even when you see it with the couple actually in front of you, that's only what they're showing you. That's only what they're telling you. I have done couples work in the past, and I just feel like sometimes I've just seen the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
And it was all raggedy toothed underneath. I was only just seeing this neat little bulge on the top. I wanted to go back to something you said there. Seeing one person, it's about them, about their intention. If the other person is non-cooperative, then we work on ways that they can take care of themselves and any children involved to the best of their ability, that they're empowered, that they have better boundaries. Because generally they'll have given themselves away, they'll have given power away, they'll have been trying to make it work. And quite often it's, being over-responsible, being people-pleasing, and they've got to the end of their tether with that and just said enough is enough. That's generally the pattern of what I see. So they tend towards the empathic side,
Yeah.
the reflectors, rather than the narcissistic side, which is, I am all important, you must take care of me. When you get two of those together in a marriage, that can work for a long, long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
Until the people pleaser wakes up or it gets so worn down that they say no more.
I want to go back to the triggers aspect because I think that's an important thing. And for any of our listeners, outside of going to a therapist or even a coach, I think to understand what your triggers are, what are some things that people can do to understand their triggers and why things are triggering them?
I think you generally know you're triggered if you feel like you're absolutely right. You're emphatic, It's outrageous that you should tell me to switch the lights off. Who do you think you are? That's me and little me being a rebel 7-year-old or whatever.
Yeah.
Being reactive rather than responsive, not explaining, just emotionally slapping back. So there's a sense of feeling slapped and slapping back. Not something you want to be negotiating at all, either physically or emotionally. So you're really convinced that your view of the world is absolutely right and there's no gainsaying it. And by the time you've got there, blood will have gone to the back of your head. You're in your fight and flight, which is why you're feeling so feisty, sometimes crushed, which will be the flight part, and you just want to get out of the room or just give way beyond belief and allow the other people to have superpower over you. But if even then you're convinced that you're right, that you're a bad person and they've got all the knowledge and, you're useless and worthless, that's still a trigger. And it's taking you back to those old beliefs that you may not even be aware of that you've had in reaction to the child care you've been given when you were young.
I think that's such a simple way of looking at it. And I think what I appreciate about it is you're not describing whether their point of view is right or wrong. It doesn't even matter if it's right or wrong. You might be 100% right that the other person should not be doing this behavior, but it is just being more aware that it's bringing up something that's beyond your consciousness in the moment.
Indeed. And these things, they do come up very easily when we're tired or we're hungry. There's that thing that people talk about being hangry when you come home at the end of the day and you're hungry and cross. It's the thing like give the kids something to be going on with, whatever. Just to sort of stop those trigger points from happening.
Easier said than done. Are there quick go-tos that you love to get people to slow down in the moment when they feel that rush of adrenaline or anger?
I think when you're in it yourself, it's really quite hard. But you can sometimes notice I'm being unreasonable here, I'm being childlike here. Quite often, if the two of you have worked out what the triggers are, then the other person can say, it's okay, I realize I've triggered you. Let's just talk this through. Maybe if you want to take a bit of space because I can see you're highly charged. And when your blood's in the back of your head, you're not in the thinking part of your brain. So you're reptilian, essentially. So wait till you're calm.
Yeah. When I used to work in a residential treatment facility, they teach us verbal and physical de-escalation skills. And one of the things that's hammered home is we're our stupidest when we're at our angriest, because we're just not thinking about what's happening.
No, an image flashed through my mind. I was thinking about, if you see a dog under threat, I'm a dog owner, and you can see them. They'll choose, they're feeling under threat. It may be just that it's a bouncy dog that's over friendly, and they'll choose if they run away or they fight or they just roll over. And that's what we do too. And we're not thinking, we're just in safety mode. What's the best thing to manage this situation?
Heather, if somebody were to randomly just fast forward through this podcast episode and just stop at this point, and they missed everything we just talked about for the last 40 minutes, what are the 1 to 2 big takeaways that you would hope that they would think about?
Really learn to listen to yourself so you know what your feelings and needs are. And really learn to listen to your partner so you know what their feelings and needs are. And that's 2. Sorry, I'm going to give you a 3rd.
It's okay.
Do the love languages quiz.
Yeah. We'll link that in the show notes because I think you're right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what blew my mind about the love languages is that the way we receive love may not be the same way we naturally want to give love. And so that blew my mind. And I was like, oh, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yes, not a mirror image.
Yeah. So thoughtful. So, Heather, let's say somebody heard this and they're like, I need to work with Heather. I want to get in touch with her or just follow her stuff. How can people find you and connect with you and talk to you more?
Well, I'm on Facebook and I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, and all of those things. My website is www.heathergarbutt.com. You can find me there. Or you can email me directly at heather@heathergarbutt.com and I will respond to you.
Awesome. Heather, it was so great talking to you and chatting with you and talking shop, as it were, about this stuff. Thanks for being on our show today.
It's been an absolute joy. Thank you so much.
And for our listeners, we'll put all that stuff in the show notes. You can follow Heather. You can catch up with her in the show notes. So if you're interested in talking more about it with her, if you're in the workplace and you're trying to figure out how to navigate these difficult relationships and conversations, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll have my stuff in the show notes as well. And we'll see you next week. Welcome to the Art and Science of Difficult Conversations, where we believe when you communicate better, you live better. As always, I'm one of your hosts, Chris. And as always, I'm joined by Lucy. Lucy, I'm very excited about today's topic because, well, number one, I've been married for a while, but I think it's so interesting seeing how dating has evolved in relationships over time. Because when I was single, we had Match and eHarmony and some of those online dating things, but we didn't have apps when I was single. And so the whole landscape is totally different. I think it's the conversations people are having with each other are different. So I'm excited today. I was on her podcast recently, so I to talk about relationships, and I kind of do a little bit of this in my therapy world. But so today we're joined by a dating and relationship expert and the host of the Love Coach in My Pocket podcast, Whitney. Whitney, welcome to our podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. Hey, Chris. Hey, Lucy.
Welcome.
Whitney, how about you share with our audience kind of where you're from, what do you do, and how you got to what you're doing now?
Sure. So I live in New York. I never dreamed of living in New York City. It just sort of happened one moment after another. I grew up mostly in Florida after being born in Oregon. I've been around the country, but I moved to New Jersey with my late husband. His whole family was in New Jersey and my family spread all around the country. So we went for a visit and I was like, what if we moved here? So we did. And that was a little over 10 years ago. And, I was working my corporate job and doing my thing. And in 2017, my husband passed away really suddenly and unexpected. Oh, it was just devastating and completely changed my life. And after that, everyone said don't make big changes for at least a year. So I stayed in my job. I stayed in my house. I didn't start a new serious relationship. But as soon as that year mark hit, I just changed everything. And one of the things that he taught me was that life is short and there's no reason to wait to do the things that we want to do. And I felt passionate about
helping people on a more personal level, helping people with dating, with interacting. I had studied psychology, but didn't use it because I went into corporate recruiting and talent acquisition. So I left my job and I became a matchmaker. And that was super fun and interesting and cool. And I have couples that are married now that keep in touch with me
wow.
that I set up. But I had clients that I could set up with the type of people they were exactly asking for, and it just wasn't working out. And I got really curious about the inner workings and what's going on here and what are the blocks. And so I got my coaching certification, started coaching my matchmaking clients, eventually started my own coaching business. And now I've been doing that since 2020. So going on 5 years with my own coaching business. I still work with a matchmaking company also as a coach. So I can set people up with a matchmaker, or I can help them learn how to become their own matchmaker. It's been a tough road. I never really planned to be an entrepreneur, but I love it and I'm passionate about it. And it's going to a client's wedding because she says, Whitney, if you weren't, or for you, I wouldn't be here. So you need to be here. It's the stories that I hear from people that really motivate me and keep me going. And plus, I just find it so fascinating and interesting. So I'm excited to be here to talk about the key conversations that we need to have all throughout the dating and relationship process.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing. Thanks for being open. Thanks for being vulnerable with us. Appreciate that. When we think about dating, I think for many of us, we're thinking about COVID, and that changed a lot of it because just that distancing and just I think people missed out on the ability to socialize for a couple of years in person. What are you seeing as changes from that dating pre and post COVID?
I mean, the biggest thing is just the level of interaction that happens behind a screen versus in person. That's just hands down totally changed. And it's kind of gone like we went way up in interacting online and using the dating apps and having virtual dates. And now everyone's kind of fatigued of this dating app culture. And it's really changed the way we date and the culture. I mean, this swipe culture just makes us make snap judgments on people, which is not normal. It's not natural. There's so much gray area in between of it's not just, is this person good or bad? Are they good for me or bad for me? There's so many layers and levels to find out. And people are just being kind of lazy with it. They're like, why am I not finding love? Why is this not working? And then I look at their profile, and their profile has nothing but generic information, and their conversations are all the same. Hey, how are you? I'm good. What are you up to? Making dinner. What are you making? Spaghetti. And then it's like no one's that interested. So the conversation trails off and it's just spinning wheels, not getting anywhere. Every once in a while, someone comes along and then you go on some dates and you meet them and you get excited. And then, there's a bump in the road, there's a disagreement, there's a misunderstanding, and they just part ways. Just goodbye. Don't even bother. Like, not willing to have the hard conversations that make us grow. Relationships are a tool. They're a mirror. They show us different parts of ourselves. They show us where we need to work on ourselves, where we need to mature and learn and grow mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So I'm a big fan of helping people because there's a lot of people out there that say, I don't even want a relationship. Fit.
Yeah.
Or like, I give up. And I relate. I understand. I think it's healthier to be alone than to be in a bad or toxic relationship. But there is so much joy and pleasure and learning and growth to be had in a relationship that is serving you.
And sorry, are you in a relationship now?
Yeah, I met my partner a year after my husband passed away, and we've been together 7 years.
Great. That's awesome. When you started coaching or when you started thinking about the coaching and helping other people, did you ever reflect back on the way you were approaching and realize, why did I do that? That's not great either.
The only reason I'm here doing this is because I struggled so much. Isn't it the case where most people that are teachers and coaches, they're teaching the thing that they struggled with and figured out and learned. So my story was throughout my teens, my 20s, like, first of all, I was kind of boy crazy. I just came across one of my diaries from 2000. And it's just like this boy and that boy and this boy. I'm like, did I have any other interests? Like, what is this? But I realize now that I felt like there was a gaping hole, a void in my life that needed to be filled by having a partner, having that validation, having somebody there. And I think it's an important stage to go through to be able to be on your own, to feel like you're a whole person. Doesn't mean that that's the final goal for everyone. It's great to find that partner that's a healthy balance, but I would get super anxious, total anxious avoidant pattern happening with me. I would find these avoidant guys and just do the stupidest things and throw myself and I just didn't get it. I didn't understand. Nobody taught me this stuff. And that's what I think my platform is now, is that nobody taught you. We learn from our families, which let's just agree that they're all dysfunctional to some degree, some more than others. But that's where we learn our relationship skills, and TV and movies, which is all about tragedy and comedy. So we wonder why our love lives are so tragic and hilarious.
So then when you started dating again, was it pretty obvious to you, like what you needed to change about your approach or the way you were thinking about the dating?
So when I was about 30, I found this coach named Rory Ray, who was one of the OG feminine relationship coaches. And I just learned so much. I started just soaking it all in, and it shifted my energy. And that's how I ended up meeting and attracting my husband and getting married.
Mm.
And so I had learned so much before getting together with him. And then after he was gone, and I was like, oh my God, like I have to start over again. Like I thought that that was it. And I knew so much more than I knew before. So I teach about the dating funnel, that, at the top of the funnel are all the people that you're potentially exposed to, that you interact with, the guy at the grocery store that says hello, like all the people, whether you're interested or not, people you match with. And then the next step is who you actually engage with, have conversation with, you filter, you get to the point of asking out, and then you go on that first date, and then next, and it all leads down to that one person. So I was at a point, 6-7 years ago, where the top of my funnel was really, really, really big. I was matchmaking. So I was talking to all the single men out there, but I was telling them, I'm not available. I was recently widowed, like back off. And they would quickly like, whoa, I'm not going near that. But it gave me a really interesting lay of the land and this ability to see, because so many people, they think, well, I want this kind of partner. And they think that you can just order it like Amazon and they're just going to show up at your door. And it's like, no, that person has to also choose you. So it's important to know who's available in your demographic. Like, yeah. But I was able to, just knowing what I knew, knowing myself well, knowing what I need, I didn't have to go on a lot of dates. Like I met everyone, and I only went on a couple of dates because I had that wisdom of how to pick people. And I hear from a lot of people that they say like, my picker is broken. They have a type, but the type's not working out. They're not attracted to the people that are good. They find healthy people boring and crazy people interesting, exciting. So a lot of this just starts with the inside work and inside growth. And I think we all have growing to do. I think we're all a work in progress, and we never quite arrive completely to a 100% enlightened state. But the whole point of a relationship is two imperfect people coming together to be on this journey together. Don't you think?
Yeah, I love that final that last mindset. Like you're working together towards a goal. It's not that you're already done and you're already there. You're going to continue growing together.
And it sounds like also having first the conversation within ourselves before we have it with somebody else about what really matters to us, who we are as a person. and what we want to offer and what we are looking for in the partner, and really knowing ourselves first.
Yeah. And a lot of people, they start making a list, right? They're like, well, I know I don't want this because that's it. And then they start making a list of their perfect person. And that's not even what we want to do. We want to create a vision of our ideal relationship. It's almost like you create almost like a job description, and then you're interviewing people to see if they could fit into that role instead of just looking for the best person ever. Like if you're looking to fill a role and it's in marketing and you meet this person that's like an outstanding financial accountant, and you're like, no, but they're amazing, but they're awesome, but they're just not a fit in the role. I see this all the time. It's like, especially with guys, when they see a pretty girl and they just get like all head over heels, and it's like, she's not that into you. She's kind of a bitch. Like, what are you doing? It's, we need to look for our partner, the person that's good for us, and not like someone that looks good and validates us. And there's a lot of mistakes that people make.
So let's talk through that funnel, because I think that's a great way to even structure kind of how to talk about these different conversations at that beginning, that conversation with ourselves. What do you suggest or help people think about in terms of even that beginning, like how we're engaging with people in the world?
Yeah. So I think the first step is to create the intention, the relationship intention, the love intention. How do you want to feel in this relationship? How do you want to communicate in this relationship? How do you want to spend your time together? Where do you see yourself hanging out? How do you spend your Sundays? How much time do you spend together? Like, what's your ultimate goal for the future? Do you want kids? Do you want to date someone that has kids? These are really important things to get clear on before you start meeting people. And we want to be as flexible as possible. Like, I know when I was dating my son, when my husband passed away, my son was 10. And so when I started dating again, I was open to somebody that didn't have kids. I was open to someone that wanted more kids. I was open to someone that didn't want more kids. And I was open to a father only if he was a really, really good father. So I had that kind of flexibility. I have friends that don't have kids and they don't want to date a guy with kids. And I get it. I'm like, no, if you don't have kids and you don't want to deal with that, like, be clear on that ahead of time, because we need to go into this with an abundance mindset. Like, if this doesn't work out, don't try to put the square peg in the round hole. Move on and find someone that is a better fit. And it's kind of confusing because a lot of times there is someone that is a good fit and it gets complicated or hard, or there's a challenge, and then everyone just wants to bail. And I think people bail too quickly these days. But also, you have to recognize what your pattern is, because some people, they're leaving. And they're always leaving, and they're always one foot out the door. And that person needs to learn how to stay. And then some people just stay and stay and stay and take the crumbs and take the crap and don't have a lot of self-worth and value, or whatever their underlying causes are. And so that person obviously needs to learn how to leave. So that's another thing that I think is so important to say, is that there's not really one size fits all advice for everybody. Like, you need to know where you're coming from and what your patterns are, and then work on breaking those patterns to get to that sort of happy middle zone. And I might be rambling and forgetting what the original question.
No, that was great. I think that absolutely answered the question. It made me think, though, how do you help folks who maybe have that balance between you want expectations and standards, and maybe then the other extreme, which is too unrealistic of expectations and standards?
Again, to the funnel, have a big top of the funnel. Go on a lot of first dates, or even call them the 0th date, because a first date, you get dressed up, you might spend a few hours together. And if you don't even know someone, if you've only been talking online, it's good to do a 0th date. It's like an hour or less. You don't have to get all totally dolled up, like, go kind of normal looking. And it's just a meet and greet. A glass of wine is the ideal, or just going to a bar or a wine bar. Even if you don't drink, have a tea, a soda. I find coffee dates, I know a lot of people recommend them, but When I was matchmaking, I never ever had a coffee date turn into a romantic connection, which I think was an interesting data point because it's just like it's bright lights, it's busy, it's just not a sexy environment. It's just not very conducive for sparking that attraction. So it's okay to go meet someone for a coffee date, but if you can try to make it a little bit more interesting. And of course I teach feminine embodiment and how to be magnetic and like attractive and sexy. And so you can bring your own spark to any date. And that's another thing. I think everyone's kind of waiting like, well, you better impress me. And it's like, yeah.
How do you have that conversation with the other person to set the intention of like, we're just hanging out, it's a zero-th date, and or are you leaving it very wide open to just saying, let's just hang out, I just want to get to know you better and see what's up?
I wouldn't recommend telling someone there that it's a zero-th date. That might make them feel a little bit, something. But it's like, so I have a gift on my website that is how to get more in real life dates from dating apps. Because I think that's one of the most important things these days is that you're not going to fall in love through text. You're barely going to get to know someone, even if, and when you do, it's not the real them. It's like wanting to hire a resume without ever meeting the person. And so there's just something different when we are interacting with someone, even virtual, like on video is close to in person, but text is not. So I recommend that when you're chatting with someone or if you meet in person, to just nail down the first date. Nail it down, location, time, date, time, location. Like, don't do one of these like, let's, maybe we'll hang out Thursday, I'll call you. No, you get the exact location, the exact time right away, and then you have a plan. And it can be as easy as, it's been really fun talking to you. I'd love to see if we have chemistry in person. And you could just say, I'm free Thursday night, but I have to work early. So I only have like 6 to 7 if you want to meet up for a quick drink. We'll see how it goes. And then maybe the second date can be more interesting. Even like going for a walk can be really nice. So there's something, and maybe you know this about being communication experts, but there's something about side to side communication that is more compassionate and more understanding and flowing than face to face. There's something more intense. Like when people fight and argue, they recommend sitting next to each other instead of like adversarially facing each other dead on.
Yeah, it's less threatening.
Yeah.
We used to do that with because I used to work with complex trauma and adolescents. So teenagers don't talk anyway, but you get them in a car driving, they'll talk a lot. They'll share. They'll talk about anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of nice to switch up the dates. Like if you go on 4 or 5 dates with someone, don't make it dinner every single time. Don't make it drinks every single time. Like do an activity, go axe throwing, go bowling, go mini golfing, take a walk, take a swim. Just, it's good to see people in different environments and have something where you're up and walking around, something where you're sitting, laying down comes later.
What about in real life? So that's online, but what about in real life? You see somebody or you're just chatting them at like a social event or whatever.
So people are so scared these days. Men are afraid of being a creep. They're afraid of rejection. Women are afraid that girls can't make the first move. There's a million reasons not to approach someone, but you miss every shot you don't take. And there was this funny meme that I saw years ago that I never forgot, where it's like a comic strip where the girl's like, I'm so tired of online dating. Why can't I just meet someone in person? And then she's at the grocery store and this guy comes up to her and he goes, hey, how are you? And she goes, don't talk to me. And then she's like, so anyway, why can't I meet someone in person? And it's like, that's what I see. Everyone's guard is up. And they're just like, as soon as someone starts talking to you, you're like, what? What do you want? What do you want? So I do recommend connecting with someone, saying hello. I have 2. All right. So you don't need a pickup line. You don't need to wow somebody. You don't need to knock their socks off. And you don't want to come in too strong saying like, wow, you're so beautiful. Wow, you're so hot. I'd love to take you out. don't do that, because then that will really like trigger somebody's defensiveness. And unless like, you know, if this really amazing, attractive person comes up to you and is like, I'd like to take you out, you might be like, wow, okay, great. But most of us are somewhere in the average area, you know, like you got to get to know us to see how amazingly gorgeous we are inside and out, right? So, I'll tell you two ways to introduce yourself. One is to simply say, you look like someone I would like to know. So simple. And once you break the ice is broken, and then you can have conversation and you can talk about the food that you're eating, or the place where you are, or the town, or are you new here? How long have you lived here? Like chit chat. But first thing is you have to break the ice, and that's the hardest part. And it just we overthink it, we overcomplicate it. So I think you can just walk up to someone. Like if I saw someone that I was interested in, I'm like, oh, I wonder if he's single. I might just walk up to him and be like, hey, I'm Whitney. What's your name? And he's like, my name's whatever. Like, I don't know. You just looked like someone I would like to know. How's your day going? Like, it doesn't matter. It's awkward. It's hard, but doing the hard things is where it's at. And it's not that. And what's the worst that could happen? And you're not saying like, hi, you're amazing. I want to go out with you, and then getting rejected. You're just saying, hi, what's your name? My name's this. Do you live here? What are you up to? And then if you're at a meetup event or a workshop or something where you're all there for the same purpose, my favorite introduction line is, hi, I'm Whitney. I haven't met you yet, because it just sounds like you're supposed to meet this person. and it works every single time. I use it, I teach it, and it's just so simple. And let the conversation flow from there. But I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I like it simple. And I think it takes the pressure off the internal pressure of having to make it something really impressive. And it lowers the defense of the other person. So I love those two ideas. That's great. I'll probably start using that when I'm networking. Hey, I haven't met you yet. I'm Chris.
Yeah. And then you just ask them their name, and they're always going to respond with their name. If you ask someone like, hey, you come here often? Again, the defenses are going to go up, and they're going to be like, why is this person asking me this? What should I say? Should I be honest? I don't know. I don't know. Do you? But if you just say like, hi, I'm so-and-so, what's your name? They're going to be like, oh, it's like sliding under the fence of the defensiveness, which I think we have to do these days, because everyone's a little bit like taken aback, because we've all been hurt before. We've all been traumatized before. We've all been in bad relationships, or, most of us.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. I don't blame people for where we're at. Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Well, what
And
is-
especially after COVID, I've heard from some men, I'm just comfortable being at home. I don't have many friends. I would love today, but it's so hard to go to talk to somebody. What would you tell them if they're really worried about being rejected or looking stupid or saying something stupid? What
Well,
might help them deal with this?
I mean, you might think that the advice that I would have is like, just go out there, just get it, just go talk to people. But I would actually be cautious about that. And I would say, what do you need to do to be confident? Like, maybe he is really confident. He just doesn't like people very much, so he wants to stay in. But a lot of times the guys are afraid, they're insecure. They don't know how to be masculine anymore, because they're not sure, because society has made it so confusing that we're like, toxic masculinity is bad. Women are the rulers of the future world. And it's like, we don't want to swing from one extreme to the other. No, it's not like patriarchy rules and now women rule. It's like, let's stop competing and learn to work together. So yeah, a lot of men are just confused. So I think, I mean, I think it's so important to work with a therapist, a professional, a coach, somebody that you resonate with that can help you feel like, hey, I may not be perfect, but I'm the best version of myself, and anybody would be lucky to be with me. That's the key. Like, if you don't
Mm.
feel that way, if you're like, I don't even like myself, who the hell is gonna like me? Then of course you're not gonna be going out, meeting people and dating and having luck and success. So we gotta start there internally with that confidence. But for some people, that's not the issue. They just don't know where to go and they just don't know how to do it. And so, that's why, like, when I'm teaching people how to date and find love, there's always the two-pronged approach. It's the practical advice of, don't use that picture on your profile and say this, and like very practical guidance and tips that work, that are proven, that are tested. And then there's also the inner work of,
Mhm.
self-compassion and confidence and healing
Mm.
things.
Love that. I think a lot of guys would love if girls came up to them more.
They
The
do.
paradox, though, is even if girls do come up to guys, I think the male minds, at least I can speak for myself and a lot of guys I've known, is will always still wonder: is she just being friendly, or is she actually interested in me? Regardless of how obvious the signal is, we're just not great at that interpreting it.
Yeah. And that's why I tell girls, all the women that, not all, most of the women I work with identify as feminine. They want to be the feminine pole in the partnership. They want a masculine partner. And so I teach also, it's okay to go up to a man. It's okay to break the ice with him, to say hello. But if you really want to keep that masculine feminine dynamic, there's this old practice called dropping the handkerchief. Have you heard of this? No. So back in the day when, gender roles were more firm, to potentially a negative extent, but in some ways also helpful because people just kind of understood. But anyway, when a woman would walk by a guy that she liked, she would drop her handkerchief and keep walking. And then he would go pick it up and walk up to her and be like, "Oh, you dropped this. Did I?" And then, of course, he would ask her out. And it was just like this little flirtatious way where she gives the green light. That's what it's about. Like, if I expect to be a woman and I want guys to ask me out, I can't just walk around doing my thing and ignoring them and be like, why aren't they asking me out? You have to make eye contact with him. You have to flirt. You have to show him that you're open. You have to, like, even if you don't ask him out, which you can, a lot of, guys love that these days, but it often turns into a dynamic where the woman is the one that's leading and pushing and making the decisions. And that can often blow up in a relationship later on if that's not what they both really want. So there's this way that you can break the ice with a guy. Hi, I love your jacket. I'd love to meet you. It's nice to meet you. I'm Whitney. What's your name? Great. But then you want to turn the table in a way where you're no longer leading the conversation. You're letting them lead and you're giving them the green light. You're smiling, you're talking to them, you might touch their arm. You could even go as far as saying something like, I bet if you asked me out, I'd say yes.
I don't think that's clear enough, though, actually. I think it needs to be a little bit more clear.
That line works really well online. Really, because so many guys there's just like this endless chatting and texting, and it's like, let's just meet already. I need to know you before I can, wake up to your good morning, beautiful text every day when I don't even know who you are and I've never met you.
I will say, even if that was me, if I was suddenly single again and somebody said that to me, I would be like, should I? Just want to be clear. But I think that's a good transition because talking about like those unspoken rules and like those rituals that like people kind of understood. Like, at what point do people, or do you think about people should start having that exclusivity conversation and even the larger conversation around assumptions and expectations and boundaries?
Oh, so good. So I believe that the commitment conversation starts on date number 1. And here's how you do it. If you just say, I'm looking for a serious relationship and I want marriage and kids and I'm not settling for anything less, that person's going to be like, whoa, hey, hold on. I just met you. I don't know. So, but you also don't want to be like, oh, I'm just dating and we'll see, I'm having fun and whatever, because then that person's going to think that that's all you want. So you have to say both what you're looking for long term and how you're going about it in the short term. And if you are dating like the funnel, then you're dating multiple people at the same time before you're committed. That's the ideal, because then you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. You're not going crazy when you haven't heard from a certain person for 24 hours. So you want to date multiple people. It also gives you an opportunity to see who's actually following through, who's rising to the occasion. Now, there might be one guy that you're attracted to and you think is really amazing, but then this other guy just keeps like showing up for you and making you feel really special and good. And you're like, okay, well, he might not be as attractive as that guy, but that guy's like off doing his own thing most of the time. So dating multiple people has so many benefits. And again, a lot of people think that it's hard and complicated, especially if they're having trouble getting even one date. They're like, how am I going to date 3 people? But all of this is part of like what I teach, and it's totally possible for anyone. And again, doing the hard things is where it's at. And it's also why we often need a coach and someone to help us, because we're like, oh my God, this is hard. And I know it is. But going back to what I was saying, what was I saying?
Just I think it's a interesting. I would never have thought of it that way. Is even on the first date, being clear, kind of about what your overall intentions are, but also how you want to get to that point.
Yeah. So it might sound like, I'm really looking for a life partner. Want someone to raise a family with. I want to travel. I want to be old together in rocking chairs and have that lasting love. But, right now I'm just taking my time to get to know people. I'm dating and I'm just open to seeing where it goes until that special person and I decide that we are going to be exclusive together.
Let's say they have that conversation, they both want a relationship. What about the conversation about being intimate and taking that relationship to that level? When? How? What would be your recommendation around that?
Yeah. So it is so subjective. Like, I'm not about rules. The way that I look at it is I teach people about the laws of nature. Like, if you understand gravity, you don't need a list of rules that say, don't jump off a house, don't jump out of a building without a parachute. If you just understand how gravity works, you figure it out. And so that's what I teach. So I'm not like, wait until date number 4 or anything like. It's just like, know that if you jump in too soon, it will cloud your thinking. It will mess things up. If you don't have the conversation about protection and safety and pregnancy, like, you could end up getting knocked up on a one night stand. Like, there's just so many factors that make us want to wait until we're able to have these hard conversations. And again, it's like, it doesn't have to be that. You just do it, you face it. It's always better to have a conversation about it before the thing happens. And so sometimes if you're like getting closer, date wise or in the moment, like, stop and just bring it up and be like, I'd like to talk to you about intimacy. I'd like to talk to you about sex. Like, before I'm ready to go there with someone, we need to at least be able to talk about it. And that's the truth. If someone can't talk about it with you, then they're not ready to do that with you. But you need to make sure that safety is addressed, that pregnancy is addressed, that even, it can be really powerful and amazing to talk about what you like and what you don't like and really get some of that out before that happens, because it will be better if you have that. And the key to great sex is often communication, and not necessarily communication in the moment, because having a long drawn out conversation or things like that can like detract from the moment sometimes. So doing it when you're fully clothed, like on a date or beforehand, can be really awesome. And allowing that buildup is so special. Like, you only get that first time with someone once, and having that moment, like that anticipation and that buildup is really exciting.
Do you feel like people have over time I think we recognize the importance of that conversation should have always been there. But do you feel like people are more and more willing to have that conversation nowadays, or less likely, or the same over time?
Yeah. I mean, there's a site, you might not know all the dating sites, but there's a site out there called Field where people just put all their sexual preferences and kinks like right on the
Mm.
website. And it's like, it's interesting because it is kind of like a hookup site, but it is also kind of a relationship site. And so it's an interesting reflection of where we are now as a society and in our dating beliefs. But I do think that sex is a really important part of a relationship. And I
Mhm.
know, for some people more or less, but for me, it's really important. And so knowing some of those things and having an idea about someone, like I wouldn't want personally. And again, everybody has their right to date how they want to and build relationships how they want to. I don't know that I would want to like wait till marriage and date someone for a year or two before that. That would scare me personally
Mm.
because, what if? But I know a lot of people do. And the more you talk about it and prepare for it and build that love and connection, like it's just automatically going to show up in the bedroom too when you have that level of depth and communication.
Mm.
It seems like that these conversations could be very tricky for a lot of people because maybe it makes them feel vulnerable
Yeah. Yeah.
to share what they want, to ask for what they need, both for women and men.
Absolutely.
And it can be difficult sometimes to navigate, even for women, when let's say they don't want to have sex on the first or second date. Maybe they would be okay with the after the fourth one. But let's say the guy is really pushing for it. And then it's up to the woman to know kind of where is her boundary. So kind of maybe it always goes back also to the conversation within ourselves. Where is my boundary? And knowing if somebody's pushing against it, that could be kind of a red flag in that communication.
Definitely.
Would we
Someone's fighting you on it. Anytime that someone wants to wait, that's male or female, like you need to respect that. You can't push someone before they're ready. And I would say that's definitely a red flag. And I also think that it's natural to want that, to be in the moment. And so there's a way to address it. And you can be kind of playful about it. Like instead of being like, no, I said no. Like if you're just kind of like moving things along and playful, sometimes there's a good place for a no, I mean no, like obviously. But sometimes I'm setting a boundary and like we just like get all confrontational. And when all we really need to do is be like, oh, I'm so flattered that you want that. Like, I want that too, but I'm just not ready. Like, we can kind of ebb with it. And, something Chris, you and I had talked about before was the nonviolent communication formula, which is really just telling someone, I feel blank emotion, I need blank. And then it becomes a boundary when you say, if you don't do that, this is going to happen. And then we got to follow through on those consequences. But you might say, like,
Mhm.
I feel really turned on right now, too. I feel that. But I also feel scared and I know myself and I don't want to rush into this and sabotage it. I don't want it to flame out too quickly.
Mm.
I told you before, I really want to wait and that's what I need. So if you can't wait for me, then, maybe we don't see each other again. But
Mm.
what I need is to wait before we go there.
Mm.
so really keeping the boundary also with ourselves.
Yeah.
And rather than say, I know I said it, but I don't want to lose the relationship. I don't lose the guy. So maybe.
And that's the funny thing is that, I've come to realize that all my instincts about dating and relationships were wrong originally. My
Mhm.
instincts now are good, but it took some practice to get in touch with. So a lot of times we'll think, if I set a boundary with this person, they're going to just be like, nope, too complicated, too hard. I'm not going to bother. But the reality is actually the opposite. So first of all, anyone that does like, oh no, I can't handle a boundary, goodbye, like you don't want that person in your life anyway. They're going to
Right.
continue to cross your boundaries and push you again and again and again. So you might as well just let it go as early as possible. And setting boundaries early, even little boundaries is so powerful because the partner, they want to be with someone that has boundaries. A smart person that's dating, if you, so if two people are on a date and one of them's pushing the other one to like move things along really fast and they're like, no, I don't want to. Okay. What you're telling that person is, I'm malleable. I will be convinced by anyone, anywhere, anytime. Like there's a lot of assumptions that go into it. But the reverse is if you set a boundary, it shows that person, wow, this person knows how to set boundaries. So when they're out on the town with their girlfriends and they're dating me, I need to know that that person can set boundaries.
That's a great way of looking at it. I wouldn't have thought about that. So that'll be like an Instagram reel for sure. 'Cause I think that's a good quote.
Yeah. I remember when I was on my first date with my partner now, and I was talking to some guy, my partner had walked away with a friend and some guy was talking to me. And when Tim came up and I introduced him, I was like, oh, this is my date for the evening. So it wasn't like, this is my man or this is my friend or this is just somebody. It was like, I set that boundary to be like, I'm with him, even though I just met him today and we don't have any level of commitment or whatever, like I'm here with him. So there's just something about like having boundaries overall with your date, with other people, in your life, in your family, in your business, work, whatever, that just makes someone even more appealing as a partner. Like we need that.
Do you typically coach your folks on, or do you cover like how to negotiate through those boundaries and figure out what the relationship will look like at some point?
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a foundation of embodiment. And, Chris, that's something you and I had connected on too, was the somatic treatment of trauma and how important the mind-body connection is and how we hold our trauma in our body. And there's so much that, we really need to start there. So I have a foundation of embodiment so that people get in touch with, how do you really feel? Like it's hard to set a boundary when you don't really know how you feel. And you're confused and torn and you're like, but I like him, but I don't, but I want to, but I don't, but I don't know. But when you really get quiet and look within and feel your sensations, you get clarity, and that's the difference between your head talking to you out of fear versus your gut that's just like dropping truths. So first we have to get in touch with ourselves, and that is done through embodied practices. And, embodiment's just a big word for a very simple concept of being fully present in your body. It's the reason it's hard now. One of the reasons is that we just have so much going on all the time. And we're always like running from one task to the next, to this video, to that, to I got to check this and I got to check that and And like, when do you have time to listen to your own inner self and inner guidance? And that's where, we connect with the divine and there's all this power. And anyway, so we have to really be in touch with how we feel and what we need first. And then we just say, here's how I feel and here's what I need. And then we ask. I think another mistake people make is going on long monologues. I felt this way for a long time and you always do this. And I just think that it's because your mom did this and blah, blah. And it's like, you've lost the person. You've totally lost them. It's best to just be like, is now a good time for us to talk? No? Okay. And then you ask them again within 24 hours. But, they might have to pee. They might be hungry. They might be cranky. There might not be a good time and they're going to overreact. And so it's good to ask that question first, like get permission, and then build, break, build. So you say something positive, like, I've really been enjoying our time together. And then you drop the boundary. But, I noticed that when we make plans, you keep breaking them and that just doesn't work for me. Is that something you can do better on? Like you tell them what you need. I need you to I need you to follow through on what you say. Can you do that? And then you stop talking. Let them talk. Listen. A lot of us, we think that communication is just, I just have to say it. I just have to let them know everything that I'm feeling and everything that I'm thinking. And that's a big no-no. Like I just talked to a girl yesterday who's in my program. And she's like, and she's freaking out because she really likes this guy and he really likes her. And she's like, oh my God, it's happening. It's happening. And I was like, and she's like, but I'm freaking out and I need him to call me. And if he doesn't call me, I'm like, how long has it been? 12 hours? Relax, let go. Nothing's changed in 6 hours since he left. Like, he doesn't have to call and check in every 6 hours. This is a you problem. But yeah, so she was saying, maybe she's like, well, I just need to talk to him and I need to tell him how I'm feeling and how worried I am and all my fears. And I'm like, no, you don't. No. There's a time and place to share that. But what that does is she's outsourcing her own emotional regulation onto someone else. And we do co-regulate and we do rely on our partner sometimes, but save that for when you need it. Don't need it all day, every day, because you're going to exhaust that person. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Part of our own self-leadership and managing ourselves first. So then we can show up as our best self in that relationship.
I love that.
Having 100% both of us, in a way, responsibility for ourselves first.
And life's going to get hard, you know?
Yeah.
People die, we lose jobs, financial problems. Like, life's going to get a lot harder than I haven't heard from you in 12 hours.
True.
You better be able to get through those moments pretty easily. And it does. It takes self-control and self-leadership. And then knowing the skills, like how to talk to someone. So if you know the format, build, break, build, set a consequence, then you don't have to tell them every thought and every feeling and every worry, like dumping your emotional baggage onto this other person. Because if they love you, they're going to take it all on. And that's not good for anyone. But instead, you could come to someone and say, you know what? My fear is really taking over. And I'm just feeling a lot of fear. And I would really love to see you soon. I would feel so much better in your arms, getting a hug from you to just quelch my fear. Could we do that? Do you think you could come over? Like, that's so much better than dumping everything and being like, I'm just worried that you're going to leave me. And like, what, you're manifesting, you're speaking these spells to, self-fulfilling prophecies happen. So if you're like, I'm just worried that you're going to meet someone else and leave me, like, you're pushing them right into the arms of somebody else. So if you can focus on what you want and what you need in the affirmative, in the positive, my fear's taking over, but what I need is a hug. I would really love a hug. Can I have a hug? Is so much better. And then it's like, oh yeah, a hug. That would be great. Yeah. And then everything feels better. Like, I know a lot of women that have had that happen where they're freaking out, mental overthinking. I've done it so much. And just that, because it's your nervous system regulation, because it's, but we can also give that hug to ourselves. And that's part of the embodiment and self-compassion practice that I teach too. And that's kind of what I did to help her off the ledge yesterday. It's like, you don't need him to quelch this. You need to learn to self-soothe, and self-soothing just goes so far.
Whitney, let's imagine for some reason somebody listening to this episode skipped through the entire episode until right this minute. What would be the 1 to 2 big takeaways that they could listen to that would say, I got to go listen to the rest of this episode?
Dating has changed in this modern world. You can be a victim of it, you can give up, or you can overcome it. And I highly encourage people to overcome the difficulties, the barrier to dating, to finding love, because although being in a toxic or fighting relationship is not much fun and not good for us, being in a healthy, supportive, nurturing relationship is just one of the greatest gifts that we can have in our lifetime. And the person you choose to be your long-term partner is like the most important thing you will ever decide. You see them all day long, every day. They affect where you live. They affect your family life. They affect your confidence. They affect your ability to show up at work. They affect your health. so many things. Like, this is a big deal and something that we need to pay attention to and not just leave to chance.
Hmm.
So I think we really need to learn how to date and how to communicate and how to be in a healthy relationship, because the payoff is so worth it.
I love that. And when somebody feels like, I am too overwhelmed with this, I need help, I want to talk to you, how they can reach you and find you.
On my website, whitneycobrin.com, Kobrin. They can set up a consultation that's free. So I will give you all the free advice and help you with a strategy on how to get through what you need to. And if we decide to work together, great. If not, no worries, no obligation. I do group programs, I do individual coaching, and I do a 90-minute session that's also on my website. So if you just want me to go through your dating profile and give you like a good direction, and then you're on your own, lots of different ways that I could work with someone. I also know a ton of coaches. So if I'm not the coach for you, if you need a male masculinity coach, I will connect you with one of those. If you need a sex coach, I'll connect you with that, health coach, whatever. I really want to work with people that are the right fit, and yeah, both ways.
Beautiful.
That's awesome.
So we'll put all that in the show notes. But Whitney, this was such a cool conversation. I wish I have like so many questions, more questions about relationships and dating, but sadly none of them apply to me. So really it's just more for my own personal information, I guess.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, for sure. So we're happy that you're doing the work out there and helping so many people. Thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and our audience.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.